Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. There's a new convention in town, and it's sure to be mega fun without the mega expense. Comics, toys, collectibles, pop culture. ShadowCon, Saturday, February 1st, 2025 in Orlando, Florida. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internets, and welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
David Rios.
Hello.
And Ron Fortier.
Howdy, y'all.
And tonight we'll be talking about the elements of making a great splash page. We also have a little bit of news we'll probably talk about at some point. Just industry-wide news, which is interesting to follow. But before we do that, we do have some housekeeping. And this time it's Jose's time to schlep a comic. Cat and Mouse Vipers is currently up for pre-order on Crowdfunder. And if we scroll down here to the creative team, we'll notice that one of our own is the inker for this particular book.
I am.
Yes. I'll give Jose a minute to collect his thoughts on how he wants to promote it because we do have a trailer to run. So we'll run that trailer and then we'll let Jose promote his part of the book.
Cat and Mouse Vipers. Giant child-snatching vipers are terrorizing New Orleans, pulling children from their homes in the middle of the night. In their eagerness to take on human trafficking in the city, Cat and Mouse find themselves in the thick of it. Crime, action, drama, with a smattering of superheroics. Now, like Roland Mann said, our head honcho here at Silverline, go do some backing, and we appreciate your support.
All right.
Awesome. Alrighty. So, yeah, I haven't talked, Tim, man. So, if you know anything about Cat and Mouse, it's about two vigilante superheroes just fighting crime in New Orleans. They're in this particular like storyline, like just like the video said, they're going after snake people that are kidnapping children out of their rooms, out of their homes, and the story kind of is a story against talking about bringing light of and just fighting against human trafficking.
Very cool. Let's say, as you were the anchor on this project and doing a lot with a mix of, different anatomy, and they're dealing with giant snake people, right? What were some of the challenges and/or joys about working on some of the different parts of anatomy or the action involving this kind of character?
Well, I'll tell you, the hardest part of that was done by Angelo, the penciler. But I got to play with, in regards to like the different scales and whatnot. Like Angelo was really good about laying out how he wanted things to look, and throwing some inks. I got to add my own creativity and do some textures that I don't normally get to play with. You know what I mean? Even inking it in digitally. Like I like to play with like the different brushes and different like washes effects that they have using Clip Studio.
Absolutely.
And that's my cover. I
do have a cover.
The pencils for that cover.
Yes, I think it's still available.
No,
it's not. All right. You can get it inked by Tommy Formonti though, if you want the cover that's been Tommy's own cover.
And then that is Pete's cover. Peter Clinton did cover C.
Yeah. So if you want to get the inked versions, those are still available. But someone has already bought Jose's original cover. And if you want to read the first Cat and Mouse volume, you can, of course, get it as an add-on. But this is an issue 1. This is a new volume, so it's a great jumping-on point. We just started earlier in the week, but we're already about halfway there, and we have the rest of the month to go. So we'll be checking in with Jose every week to see how his pitch improves.
Right. If you follow me on my social medias, expect to see posts about it because I've been posting up the covers, and I'm going to be posting up some of the pages.
You should. Those covers are great. Every one of those covers is awesome.
Yeah.
And
listen,
correct me,
Angelo, Peter, me, we did a decent job penciling and inking, but Roberta just like made them absolutely beautiful with their colors.
Yeah.
Angelo's another Cooper School graduate, right?
He is.
And is this his first work?
This is his first work with Silverline. I'm not sure if it's his first work period. I know that he's already he's actually done a crowdfund for an anthology that he worked on with several other creators, which was fully successfully funded, and it's pretty awesome as well. But yeah, that's definitely his first work with Silverline.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah,
very cool.
And as you say with each one of these, the comic is already fully completed. You're not crowdfunding some pipe dream that will take the money and run. You are pre-ordering a fully completed book.
And if it helps with any bit of confidence, the pencils for issue 2 are already done. I just got to hop on inks once I'm finished with another project.
Awesome.
So
very cool.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, it's moving along. It's great. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for people to get it. I'm excited for them to read it.
Yeah. And also, we do have another shakeup in the comic world that happened today. Diamond Distributors went through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, went to auction, but in the auction was picked up by Alliance Entertainment. So the status quo of comics being able to be sent to mom and pop shops around the world is still intact. However, it's a little bit of, like Ron said in the pre-show, a little bit of a 11th hour shakeup there.
Well, I mean, we were talking to local comic, shop owners here in Fort Collins, and I'm sure it's a general feeling, throughout the rest of the industry. I've been watching people's blogs and, whatever, just wondering, okay, so what's going to happen next? And there were all kinds of rumors flying around. Even last week, I mean, there were rumors that Todd McFarlane might be bidding on buying whatever. But again, mid-afternoon, Ben Dunn, the publisher, editor of Anti-Hatted Press, posted online that Alliance Entertainment, as you already mentioned, Tim, had bought Diamond Comics, and he further went on to say they bought all of it.
Yeah,
so what legs or whatever, they got the whole kit and caboodle, as he said, including their distribution arm, which is what everybody was really concerned about.
Yeah, they got Diamond Distributors, Diamond Select Toys, the Comic Grading, Flexible Grading Authority, and their infrastructure. So, which they said their plan is to integrate that with Alliance's existing infrastructure. So, it may even lead to a better network in terms of getting comics in the hands of shop owners.
Yeah, that's what all of us are now, taking a deep, sigh of relief. And then, that's what you all look for when these kind of things happen. All right. Mm-hmm. For whatever hole, management of Diamond got them in, let's hope Alliance has, the entrepreneurs and the savvy to correct that. All right. And hopefully make distribution even better than it was before.
Yeah. And our buddy Rich Johnston, friend of the show and friend of Silverline, who runs Bleeding Cool, has been keeping his ear on this, of course. And he said that it sounds like Alliance bought it for more than what anyone was anticipating Diamond would go for.
Yeah.
Which is a good sign because it means that it's still a sought after property.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially now, we just finished, hyping a really great comic from a small independent company. All right. Yep. And, thanks to, Roland's leadership and whatever, Silverline now is, distributed through Diamond. All right.
Yeah.
And at a time when, that really looks good for independence across the board. All right. This wasn't when we wanted things to shut down. We want things to amp up. We want more independent comics out there for all you loyal comic fans to go to your comic shops every week and see other comics other than the big two all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I said this is a big shocking moment in the comic industry. And if you want to convey a big shocking moment in your comic that you're creating, the best way to do that is in a splash page.
What a
segue.
Go, Tim.
Wow.
Wonderfully done. All right. So tell me, Tim, what is a splash page for a panel?
So a splash page, let me see if I can get this image pulled up here. Doing the classic Microsoft Paint screen share.
Keep it classy, Tim. Keep it
classy. There you go. So classic splash page, of course, is a page of a comic where the page is one big image. It doesn't necessarily have to be one big panel, but certainly that is the case. Sometimes you might have inlays. Sometimes you might get freaky deaky with it and do weird like fade ins or like cross fades or do like an acid fade if you're want to get weird with the colorist. But essentially you're taking one page and making it to this big scene that'll take up the entire real estate. Because you're revealing something or making a change or doing something that you need the reader to stop and take the full gravity in or fully appreciate. And I believe this is one such from Beyond the Stars. Is that correct, Ron?
Oh yeah, that's a payoff page, and that's what a lot of splash pages are. I mean, it's a case of creating in the storyline, the narrative, some kind of setup for a dramatic reveal eventually. All right. And what you're seeing here was the wrap up of issue number 3, where our heroes are aboard an alien spaceship. And as the story, opens up and you go from page to page, they're exploring this alien spaceship. And I have the letterer working out this like noise, like thump, thump, that keeps appearing on pages or panels, all right, as you read through it. And you're told that eventually when this ship went into its opening voyage or whatever, it didn't have the energy it needed to sustain the power it's supposed to contain. It has solar batteries, but it couldn't operate them. And so I definitely, over 2 issues, set up this concept that in this universe, there were these giant space whales. And ultimately, you work through issue number 3 and you keep seeing that thump, 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 until eventually comes the reveal, and which is this beautiful page that artist Andrea Bormina delivers, is the actual engine of this giant mothership is actually the heart taken from one of these space whales.
Yeah.
And look down in the little tiny bottom of the page, those little stick figures, that's our cast. So there's your scale and the enormity of what we have here. And suddenly that thump, you understand it. This ship is actually organic as well as mechanical and technical and is alive. So boom, there you go.
Absolutely. And I mentioned as well last week some of my favorite ones. Probably what made me fall in love with X-Men are some Magneto splash pages. And you can also do it as, if you're, in the example in here, it's if you're doing a splash page, it may not just be one page. You might do a double splash where you take up 2 pages of real estate.
Yeah.
And we get
Yup.
one of the best panels from Rubicon. And it's just Magneto doing Magneto stuff. But if you want to take a moment where you are, perhaps you want to fit in more dialogue, or you're wanting to, like, this can be a really good way to intro into a new storyline or exit out of a storyline, is to have this grand act being done and you cover 2 pages. So it takes up and so as a reader, as you kind of talked about earlier, is with the last 2 silent panels, is that with less text, you actually end up spending more time on the panel than you would with more text. And so by taking time to create this large swath of artwork, you're allowing this moment to exist longer for the reader, which is, if you are, selling the moment that is Magneto defending Asteroid M and creating this new home for mutants, right? You do a double splash for that to sell off. Or if you are having a moment where you're doing a payoff and talking about this is a living heart of a living ship, you take a moment to let that sit in for the reader and have a splash page. So as writers, we've talked about before that it's all about pacing, right? And that it's of course you can't do splash pages on every page because that would
I mean,
you dilute the impact.
You could if you're doing a picture book, but
there you go.
Yeah,
but yeah. You want it to be something absolutely, exceptional. I was listening just early tonight before I came on. I was watching Jeopardy, and they brought up one of the questions on Jeopardy was the scare moments, like the jump. The scare jump when you're watching a horror movie, all right?
Yeah.
In a way, the splash page can be that. It can be that same kind of money shot that you, again, in the story, if you're going to lead to that visually blockbuster, then you leave clues, you hint at it, you do this or whatever, then you turn the page, and there's this page. And with, like the Magneto page, like what we did with Beyond the Stars, it's basically something that the reader literally sits back and goes, wow, and then takes in time to look at all of it, all right? And say, this is extraordinary. This is worth that kind of drama. But again, if you're doing this every single page or every other page or 2 or 3 times an issue or whatever, ultimately you dilute the impact of what the splash page is intended for. So again, it doesn't mean you can't have open pages. You can't have 2 or 3 pages or whatever. And, one of the things that when I sent you guys some pages, because we're talking about a splash page, but one of the more traditional aspects of any comic book, if you don't even have a splash page, is the splash panel, which is the key panel on a page. All right. And that a lot of times can be the major moment in that page. as you go through the issue of the comic book. And a lot of those are used pretty much to set up the scene and the locale, or other times when you come to an action sequence that you want to focus a little bit more on the action, you might have a major panel and then smaller panels surrounding it, like satellite images as well.
Absolutely. I didn't bother pulling out, but like I talked about this on I think an episode last year, talking about one of the splashes done in Ministry of Truth, where they did it like stained glass, where you have the main action taking majority of the page, but then the surrounding context for it is done like as if like stained glass motifs, as if they're all part of this one like thing, and they're all set in like that. So if you have an artist who likes to get experimental, who likes to get weird with it, there's also a great time for you to just kind of like put in your notes, like, here's what's happening. Have fun. What's your idea? And of course, we talked about before that if you're working with an artist, especially if it's a new team, you want to communicate as much as possible in your panel descriptions with your art team. But I feel like there's also moments, though, where if you have like maybe one page in there where you're saying, like, this is the idea I'm trying to get across, here's the action that's happening, you're totally okay with approaching an artist, be like, what are your thoughts? What do you think would be a cool way to sell this? Because as I'm sure Jose said, like, there are moments where you get panel descriptions that just don't work because either they don't make sense, or the action is too complicated, or the layout would not work for the whole page. But if you approach your artist, be like, how would you convey this? There's probably something rattling around in there, and like how they think they'd have fun with it.
Right. I mean, there are times where, you know, you get a script and, you know, on script, it flows like fine, reading it, looking at it, going over it and whatnot, but then having to put it into panel narrative, you know, panels and whatnot, doesn't always work out exactly, you know what I mean, the way the script says laid out. So, you know, as an artist, you can take a little bit of liberties, but if you do, talk to your writer about it, because you want to make sure that you guys are all on the same page one way or the other.
Right.
Oh, totally. I mean, I've lost count of how many times I've had artists, you know, come back to me and say, you know, you had like 4 panels on this page, all right, but it's going to work better if I could have 5, because I can see something that you didn't see in your imagination. And man, trust me, okay, I'm telling the story literally. When an artist is that invested and wants that story to work and comes to me and says, hey, I have an idea, this is, you know, this needs another panel, there's no argument on my part whatsoever. I'm like, hey, thanks, go ahead and do it, okay, voila. Or the flip side, I can have like 6 panels on a page and they can come back and say, you know, we really only need 5. I can heighten this and get the same effect of what you're trying to do with that.
Merge 2 panels together.
So again, it's like you're part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
And you should have the same common goal to tell the best story you can, both literally and visually. Yeah. But again, I defer always visually. Always when an artist comes to me and says, hey, we ought to consider this or that, then I'm all for it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. We do have some things in chat related to the topic. Pops, of course, talking about Thor 380, Thor versus the Midgard Serpent. Had some really great splash pages in there as well. I can see if I can pull up some examples there in a second. But that's also another moment where to do the gravity of that story of that fight, they did do multiple splash pages kind of back to back, because that is the intended purpose and pacing of the fight. Whereas if you were to do a 5-panel page, it might actually go too quick for the reader. And Tommy saying, guess what's printed and ready to ship out? Is that perhaps a Wolf Hunter number 2? Can people who place their orders be expecting that in a few business days? Depending on shipping and server responses.
I think what Tim is saying is, please.
Okay.
You're talking about, you know, the whole idea of splash pages and doing them all, you know, right, and ending up with a storybook. Thing is, it reminds me of years ago. I'm in discussions with an artist, and we were talking about the Atom from DC, right?
Yeah.
So he basically looks at me and goes, if you were writing an Atom story, all right, what would you do to make it different than, another Adam story? And it took me like about, I don't know, 20 seconds to sit there and think about it. And then I went, oh, I know what I do. I totally know what I do. I do a storybook, Adam, all right? Which every page would be a splash page with the Adam like that on it.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that's what he's all about. So every page you'd open up, everything around the Adam would be giant size. A giant size shoe, a giant size telephone, a giant size flower pot, a giant size this. But he'd be like this on every single page.
Yeah.
Wow.
See, and that, like Tim had said, that's used, you know what I mean, when you're doing it as like a penciler and whatnot. Like, you try your best to, to make it as pretty, as detailed as you can, because that's pacing. That's slowing that page down, like that big reveal, that big, shock moment, or that big, even just a big action moment. You want to be able to slow it down so that the reader can like kind of scan the whole thing. That slows that fight scene. That's just like, a bad example would be like Dragon Ball Z, where like it takes 4 episodes to throw a punch. It's like very slow. You know what I mean? It's the same principle. You're slowing it down so that the reader can, engross themselves in that action.
Manga comics, sometimes drive me up a tree. I have a friend here locally who actually letters One Punch Man.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And literally, it took like 30 pages of nothing but a fist going like this. Over 30 pages. All right. I was like, oh, come on, please. All right. It's like Japanese comic fans must have the greatest amount of patience in the world.
Well, that's also One Punch Man is also, that is a gag where that is, again, it's the intended purpose of like, this is a moment where like,
right.
If we're from the same genre as Dragon Ball Z, which is 30 pages of just back and forth throwing punches. And our whole gimmick is that our character beats anyone in one punch. We're going to take 30 pages to do one really good punch. I'm a fan of I mentioned this before, but there's a manga and anime called Rising Impact, which is a golf anime, which is available on Netflix if you want to watch it. It's my favorite anime of last year. But it's it's the gimmick of it is that it's the legends of the Court of Camelot and the Legend of Sir Gawain transposed into golf. So you'll get these splashes or these like stop moments where they like reveal King Arthur essentially, right, as like this former teacher at Camelot Academy, or you have these very funny, silly moments where they'll cut to like the Riser and Liebel, the traumatic dragon slayers from their legend, are now challenging him to like a shooting contest. So very funny moments where you can use those splash pages to have these, if the intention is there, do these funny reveals or these funny moments where you cause the reader to like, you're supposed to have a double take here.
Totally.
There you go. We talked a lot about pacing and sort of writing thereof. Jose, as an inker, we were talking a little bit. You're going to be probably spending more time on the details of a splash page to really, because everything's being blown up, so you have more real estate to make things, be extra beautified. As an inker or as an illustrator, when you're given a splash page, what are going to be some of your other considerations, or what's going to be kind of how does your workflow differ from approaching a normal page or panel?
I don't think it changes that much. You consider your shadows. You consider I guess different design theories when you go, because the penciler ideally is going to like lay out where he wants his shadows to be. But even at like I said, as an inker, you add your own flair, your own touch to it, and you don't want to do anything that contrasts the direction that you want that particular panel to read from, right? So you wanted to the eyes to flow the way they're supposed to, clockwise, across the entire page. And you can do that by manipulating shadows. You can do that by building less shadows, on the beginning, and as you start coming down across the other side, you know what I mean, darken your shadows. It really does like help kind of focus and narrow down the eye. And there really there's a design reasoning or a theory for it. I can't remember what it's called. It starts with an F. I'm gonna have to look it up. But yeah, so I try to take that into consideration. Not that I'm fluent in all kinds in design elements, but you know what I mean. I know how I want my eye to move across a panel, across a page. And, you know, I take that into consideration when I ink.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, as you know, you get into the game because, to quote Hourglass, because you have good taste, and you get that taste by consuming media. And so it's always the point of continuing the game is just always increasing our skill, and as we do, our taste increases, and so we're always increasing it. But we got into it in the first place because we know we like and we like what we're looking at. So naturally, a lot of design elements or a lot of these thoughts you're going to have when you're considering it comes from your own experience ingesting the media.
Right.
Except for Ron, if a splash panel is one panel page, what do you call it? 2 pages for one panel?
Okay. So a splash page, right, is the entire page, like a one piece of art for the entire page. When Ron was referring to a splash panel, think of it like, say it's a 5-panel page. You know, you have 4 that are boxed-in panels, and then the 5th one has no box border around it, so it's more coming out and even crossing across the other panels. That's a splash panel.
Yeah.
A lot of times they use switching scenes, and you're going back from one scene to another. And Tim, I sent you a couple more from Beyond the Stars.
I think so.
And one of them had a splash panel that showed an alien archaeological dig.
Yes.
Put that up because I'll explain how that ended up. Andrea pretty much, you know, did the composition. I never tell the artist where to put panels or, you know, how to shape them or set them up on a page. But I was going to this page, this scene, all right, which takes place on an alien planet, and these humans are studying this archaeological alien site of a race that supposedly, you know, has been gone for like 1 million years from this part of the cosmos. So the first of 5 panels, I believe, on the page, I wanted the opening sequence. I called it a splash panel. Here we are. We're on the dig, all right? But how Andrea drew it, when I finally saw the final page, blew me away because he just took half the page and did it top to bottom. And it was absolutely beautiful and just powerful and totally worked. There's that splash panel. Whereas in my traditional writing comic book page, I had thought maybe the top of the page or whatever. But the way he chose to present it was 10 times better. He made it this long, rising, archaeological, you know, relic or whatever that the humans are investigating. So again, a really good use of a splash panel.
Yeah. And then what do you call one image takes 2 pages? That was when you go back to like that Rubicon thing we showed earlier, Big Needle Rubicon, but that is a double splash. And if you want to get really tricky with it and go back to something from the 90s, you could, if your printer allows it, do a fold out. It'll be very gimmicky, but you know, I think it's time for a comeback.
Right.
But if you're looking for like,
I thought it was interesting. Marvel did what was it, for one season of comics for like, was it 1 or 2 months? They did them all in letterbox form. So basically, the comic book, you know what I mean, was sideways, and they even did a double splash page up and down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then one image that's a 6-12 page, of course, is the splash page. And this is something that's secret that may get revealed later. I've definitely talked about it before, and it's up to you, audience, to see if you can put 2 and 2 together. But yeah, typically you're gonna have.
I know what that is. I know what that is.
But yeah, you're gonna have, like I said, it's a moment where you do these moments to do a big reveal or to show off something, or if you have something that just you think like this, hey, we don't necessarily need to reveal something here. This could just look really cool. that is also an acceptable piece, like, because it is a visual medium. Same reason why you do a set piece in a movie, right? Is there's no reason they needed to film the shotgun sequence in John Wick 3 as a top-down one take, but they did because it looked cool.
There you go.
The rule of cool, right?
Yeah. So we kind of mentioned a little bit about shading and some of the more like attention you might spend to like the inks and gradients. Speaking of gradients, as the colors, David, when you are given a splash page, do you find that you spend a lot more time working on sort of your total like color blending? Like, is it spend much more time on the rendering than you do on the flats, or how does it work? John McFord, yes, you're correct. Thank you, Nick, time.
A lot of it depends on where the action is. I'm trying to bring up this page. It's actually a page that's in the on the intro. It's kind of interesting because it's let me I think this is page 9. One second. Open this up. I'm looking at it in a PDF I put together. But yeah, I do tend to kind of focus more definitely on the details on the page. Let me get it up here real quick. If I can, what's this? Is this 9? Yeah. Open this one.
So as you all guys know, Dave is working on colors and manning all the computers at NORAD.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I'd say I feel like Ron is definitely at the point where he's a seasoned vet. He's been as well, so he definitely has like all his files and folders like in a way that makes sense. Where I feel like the rest of us are still in the manic working artist phase of our career, where it's just everything's everywhere. We're trying to like dig in the files. Like, I definitely have like
the only thing organized are the pages I have done.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really a fun topic. I mean, go ahead, Dave.
So this is actually a double panel page. So it's kind of almost a pseudo splash page. But typically, if I would approach the top part here is I tend to try to push a little more on the details and stuff like that. Where's the focus and bring the characters up a little bit more. But then added on to this, I also take into account the amount of detail and the punch of what's on the page. And it may not, in this particular case, for me, when I rendered this page, the big detail was actually not on the splash panel, but was on the second part of this page here, which is the face on the bottom. So in this case, I really went through and tried to focus on, a lot of the details and things for the face.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it almost works like a visual exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see the big picture, and then boom, there's that close up the eyes. That's powerful stuff.
And doing a pseudo splash like this is something that's still totally valid, and it still serves the same purpose as a splash page. But if you can find ways to cheat and make things work, absolutely do so. Another illustration, that one shot sequence of John Wick 4, it was not a true one shot. They just did some really smart stitching in frame, essentially. So if you can cheat to make things work and look great, do it. Yeah.
So, since kind of the key on this page actually, it was great because, you got your elements of that, but because your key went through, and to me, it was this actually the bottom part of the face is not only did I go through and detail things a little bit more, but I also pushed a lot of the lighting more because I mean, if you kind of look at, one, it is a little more outside. It's outside on the top, but if you look at the greens and things like that, on here, and even the skin tones, there's a lot more pushing of things going to white and a lot darker.
Right.
So that's what I kind of go through and I approach as I try to lay out on the page and focus on what the areas are, and kind of really push that. So
that's also made what's really great about that face is the way you approach the grading on especially on the skin tones. It feels super painterly, and just the way that it flows from your high to low tones, right? In the way that adds so much more depth and dimension than you would just get if it was, just on the page, right? So much of that depth there comes just from the colors.
What I love about the splash page is it's the potential that's out there, all right? And just having, just talking about these themes, this discussion, the use of panels, and the power of storytelling. I'm brought back to early days of Marvel Comics, and I don't remember DC using all that many splash pages, but I do remember 2 from Marvel in its really, really early days. And I'm talking about, hey, I'm maybe 15 at the time, all right? And just to show you the difference between what you can do with a splash panel, and there was this big let up in the Fantastic Four over a couple of years of Reed Richards and Sue Storm being in love, engaged, and whatever, all leading up to their wedding. And so you come to that wedding issue, and the end of that issue, after they fight off all these villains or whatever trying to stop their wedding, is the actual ceremony. And it's a splash page with Reed and Sue. The minister's got his back to us as the shot was illustrated, but Reed and Sue are standing there holding hands, and then beyond them, filling the entire church, is like every Marvel superhero they had invented up until then, from the top guys. So I mean, the cast is ridiculous on this splash page. But again, it's the moment, it's the scene. All right, so you've got like a cast of hundreds. Okay, you go another couple of years, and you're reading Spider-Man, right? And Spider-Man, over a period of about 5 or 6 months, is putting off Aunt May because she keeps bugging him about dating the neighbor's daughter, Mary Jane. And of course, all of us reading this, all right, are thinking, oh yeah, every one of us has an aunt or whatever who's trying to fix us up with somebody's daughter, cousin, or whatever, right? And of course, Peter is like, not gonna happen, no way. Who knows, who this girl is, what she's like, or whatever, right? Till you get to that one penultimate issue where this whole gag comes to the end. You turn the page, the last page, right? Because there's a knock on the back door, the kitchen door, and he goes over and you turn the page, and it's a splash panel over Peter's shoulder, and Johnny Romita draws the most beautiful redhead in the world, right? And hi, guy, this is your lucky day. And that was Mary Jane's introduction into the Marvel Universe. So again, a splash page with only 2 characters, another one with a cast of hundreds. The potentials are there. It's what you need them to do to convey in your story.
Yeah. And something we kind of mentioned on some of our other episodes is that, a scene is all about change, right? You're coming in with a certain status quo, and the scene ends when that status quo has changed, either for the characters or from they're in. A splash page is a great way to also signal visually that status quo has changed and you've reached the end of that scene and the end of that arc. Right. I've mentioned earlier about all of my favorite arcs is Infamous Iron Man, right? Where Dr. Doom becomes Iron Man, because the moments where Doom becomes a hero, and it's not just one, are I think actually when some of like the best when Marvel gets some of the best writers on it. But if you want to have a moment where you have a established team of heroes is now being faced with a situation where they need to change their status quo and change the way that they work with a person they've interacted with for so long. You can convey that moment of we've reached some sort of accord without having to actually write out all the details of that by showing it in action, because again, it's a visual medium. It's fun one from 2022 where we now get Doom the Worthy.
Right.
But yeah, you can have a moment where everyone is fighting against Doom, and you have this moment where now it's like, okay, we need to rethink this moment, and you don't want to write out that full. How does everyone on the Avengers think about this? You can instead show it in action and include the cast on the panel. Yeah, very cool. And kind of Nick of Time points out something there is that they did the story justice in the Spider-Man cartoon. I think also what makes splash pages so iconic in comics is because it's a visual medium that often gets translated into other visual mediums, right? Is that there's so many other cartoons and movies and games and all that stuff, but the splash page is that moment where we are forced to stop and take in the comic. So it's that moment that becomes more ingrained in our memory. And so when we were thinking about these iconic storylines like Infinity War, like Spider-Man Origins, or well, unfortunately, we're not going to get The Day the Earth Stood Still because Kang the Conquerors kind of fell flat with that storyline. But we hoped for a time. Maybe with Doomsday, there are several good splash pages for Doomsday. But it's these moments of when you think like, if we hit this one scene, if we hit this one moment, then like I know that like I'm satisfied. The rest of the movie could be completely different. But if we hit this one moment that hits how I remember the splash page.
I mean, hey, look, I'm living proof here, okay? Because I just mentioned 2 splash pages I saw over 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, and their impact on me as a reader, all right, is still there. I can actually see those pages in my mind to this day. Yeah. That's how powerful they are and effective they are.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about splash pages financially? I feel splash pages, like as an artist, you know what I mean? You pencil a splash page, it's probably going to sell at shows or if you go to sell those pages and whatnot, it's going to sell first before some of the narrative pages. I could be wrong. I haven't made it that far yet, just so you guys know. So it's more of a question than a statement.
Be really careful about that. All right. I mean, sincerely. All right. Because again, all right, not wanting to cast dispersions on anyone here. Right. But there was a shift in comic book history at one point where, I lived through the fact that reading and collecting comics, nobody knew who the creators were. And then ultimately, as we got into the 60s and the Silver Age, they started putting credits down. Okay, well, people deserve credit for what they do. Now you get to the 70s, mid 70s and whatever, early 80s, and suddenly you've got young creators who it's not enough just to be recognized as a decent, good professional. They start becoming rock stars, and maybe a little bit more important than the actual comics themselves. Okay, now to the point where ultimately several new comic companies come into existence, right? And all of a sudden, we're getting comic books that are pretty much mercenary, in that they're not really about doing good comics. They're not really about doing good stories that will move you, that will have an effect on you. But they're basically one splash page or one pinup page after the other, after the other, after the other. And you know for a fact, the only reason they're there that way and that story is told is what you just said, Jose, because I can take these out. And aside from the money I'm already making, I'm going to make a lot more money from the fans at shows because I can sell this for $300, $400, $500 a page and double dip what I've done. All right. And no offense, but those weren't comics. All right. I mean, those were pretty much, I look at it as basically, like I said, mercenary rock stars, basically, making a name for themselves and getting rich off of comic storytelling.
Right.
And,
I get that.
And stories were crap. The stories were crap. There were no stories in them. All right. Again, that phase came and went, but that happens in any industry. All right. And that's the way it is. Today, I mean, we look at what's going on in the comic world today, and we don't see that anymore. I think it was a phase that came and went, because I give much more credit to comic readers. All right. Ultimately, they sat back and said, hey, look, it was kind of nice. It was kind of flashy. You appreciate it for a little bit. But hey, I want a solid story. Let's go back to telling good stories. All right. All right. Let's eschew a splash page every other page. If it's going to be a splash page, make it work with the story. It's like gratuitous violence or sex. All right. If you're just throwing it out there, all right, with no regards to the story of the plot or your characterization, then it is flash. All right. It's the National Enquirer of comic books. And that's all you're doing. You're just trying to shake up people and say, ooh, look what I did. All right.
Right.
Right. But if you're devoted to the story, if you're devoted to the media, if you really, really want to tell a good story and work with your team, artists, writers, letters, colors, everybody, all right, and create a comic book that by the end of it, fans are going to love, all right, and people are going to be proud of, then that should always be your goal.
Yeah. I mean, kind of as like a very literal take on that point is if you want to think about how to do a hyper-violent, sexy splash page there's a comic called Sex Criminals, right? Which with a name like that, you would think, it's probably done like old stuff, but it's actually a very successful image book. And they did a very good, violent, sexy splash page. But the rest of the book was so much about their relationship developing between the characters and their interactions with this world and exploring these like very weird powers that they had in this world, that it was giving our readers a reason to come back and order issue 2 so they could keep on making more volumes, right? That's the point. Like, if it's all just fluff and gore, you're making a smut book, which has its market, but it's probably not, your intended market if you're trying to break out into creating well-loved and thought-out comic books.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
As a marketing tool, as a writer, having a splash page actually works out well for us as well, because it kind of works the same way as a steamer in a trailer, right? Whereas, think about like leading up to Rogue One, you got the trailers there had the moment of Darth Vader flashing the lightsaber in the dark hallway, or of the battle on the beach, and all these things. And like by themselves, like if you were to translate that to a comic, those would be great splash pages. And so you can make those moments like kind of like what we do now, where we do textless panels, where a splash page is this really cool moment where you can do something like show Doctor Doom holding Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer without any text on it and without any context, and it's just a big what's happening moment that makes people want to go and read the book. So having these really good splash pages then allows you as a writer who's taking the full book to con or to market to create, a marketing suite or marketing material that goes around that, showing off the cool splash pages that are within.
And again, it's what your intent is, all right, and how you want to serve the story itself. So I mean, it's just like, hey, I'm not averse to using every tool you have, literary and artistically, to make the comic book, work and be exciting and be entertaining, all those kind of things. But again, it's just, just be true to the story. Be true to the story.
Like I said at the top, it's all about intention and pacing. If your intention is to run some sort of gag or gimmick off of multiple splash pages back to back, where, if you're doing something like a World Serpent, like whatever, where you need multiple splash pages to show the length of this thing, and that's the gimmick, that's cool. But if that's not there and it's just splash pages for no reason, you've made a picture book and it's not going to be able to tell a story in the same way. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
these splash pages should be sprinkled in, sparingly, where they fit in, and not just for, like you said, not just for particular gimmick reasons, unless World Snake, right, situation. Like, I wasn't talking about like doing it. I got to put splash pages so I can sell them and make money. Like, if it doesn't fit into the story is what's important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do like the idea that someday somebody might want a piece of my artwork on their wall.
Yeah,
that's really all I'm into.
Well, some
I
of Joey
spent-
already does because they bought your cover. Yeah.
I spent 7 issues on the Green Hornet setting up a female Kato, right?
Yep.
To go to the last page of page 7, where the new Green Hornet is in a warehouse surrounded by criminals. And it looks like it's the end for him, all right? Because there's no way he's gonna beat the entire gang by himself, right? When all of a sudden, like, his shadow comes up over his shoulder, right, and he turns around, and Jeff Butler draws arguably one of the most beautiful pages in that whole run that we worked on together, and that's Mishi Kato standing on top of a crate, right, getting ready to jump into action, and Paul Reed, the new Green Hornet, looks up and sees her, and there's only one line of dialogue, word balloon, that whole page, and he just gasped, Kato. And that's it. She didn't. The next page goes into action or whatever. He jumps down and whips the hell out of these 5 guys or whatever. So the story is with this. After we were off the project, about a year or so after the project, I go to the mailbox one day in the post office, and I have a package, news package, right? And I open it up, and Jeff sent me that page.
That's awesome.
And he autographed it and said, "Nobody else is going to get this but you. You are Mishy's dad."
That's
Jeff.
awesome.
No.
Yeah. So I have my own splash page, which is a treasure in my collection. Let me tell you.
That's cool.
Yeah. I have one of the splashes from Wolf Hunter that Quentin Bedwell did set up downstairs as well. And yeah, it's that same thing where it's, if nothing else, they also just serve as, like you said, like as a reader, the moment that gets burned into your mind from that book. But as someone who, if that book means a lot to you, or if you're a creator behind the book, then it also serves as a great memento. And this is the moment where this thing came to life for me, right?
Right.
There you go. Yep,
Yeah.
that's it. And again, that's what I'm saying. It's you as a writer, we put our heart and soul in these characters. All right. And I mean, unwrapping this page and seeing what page it was on top of everything else. All right. I mean, Jeff could have got a real pretty penny for that page.
Right.
Really. Okay. I mean, considering the history of that strip and, the huge following it had and whatever, right? That he would just give it to me. Okay. I mean, I'm never going to part with it. Are you kidding? All right. That's locked away someplace. All right.
Yeah.
Something special, let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the feeling, from doing a splash page, that's the feeling you should have, right?
Yeah.
From reading it, from drawing it, like you should have that feeling. Like if you're a person reading your comic and you come to that point, of the book, the splash page, it should hit you like, oh man, wow, right? You should want to stop and pause and just like kind of soak it all in and be a part of whatever scene is happening in that splash page. At least that's the attempt, right? As a creator, as an artist, to attempt to invoke those feelings, in someone.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the whole point we're in this, right? Is because comics have brought us joy. We've enjoyed it so much that, like, it's almost like we're doing a service to, like, pass on that same joy to whoever is reading.
Right.
Always pass it forward. Always, again, hey, love going to cons, love meeting new young writers and artists, all right, who have that same passion that we do. And man, I just encourage the heck out of them, all right? Just, hey, never lose your dreams. Just keep working and working at it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, this has been that Silverline show on Tuesday, talking about splash pages, splash panels, all that good stuff. We do have a Silverline crowdfunder, pre-order window thing available. Yeah. Which you can find out. The link is in the chat earlier, but also they've done a small link. So if you type in, I believe it is.
Talking about the Silverline link?
It's It's Silverline
crowdfunder. Silverline Comics crowdfunder.
SilverlineComicsCrowdfunder.com, right? That was, if you type that in, you'll go straight to it, and you can get your pre-order in for Cat and Mouse Vipers issue 1.
Right, get in right on the first issue.
Yes.
You can't go wrong with that.
And Nick of Time says this is very educational. Thank you. That is our hope, is to make a show that is for the people who are looking to make their first comic or to get some other, like Matthew Cricky. Matthew Cricky has been in chat for, I feel like, a year now. And they put out their book, Night Slayers, and they're working on a second one, right? Like, that's awesome. So our goal is to help, talk about things from a seasoned or professional standpoint. So we can give you things to think about that you might not necessarily think about when making your comic. Because we've had episodes before, and we'll probably do more episodes talking about the business of making comics, because no one teaches you how to be your own business.
This is true.
Okay, even in at the Cuber School, like, we had a business class, but I feel, and I loved my business teacher. Amy was amazing, but I feel that maybe I should have asked more questions. But had I known more about it, what I know now, that then I definitely would have asked more questions. You know what I mean? Because I would have had more experience to ask that questions. I know that sounds really weird.
Sure. Yeah.
Ask everyone. Ask anything.
No, it makes total sense, Jose. I mean, how are you supposed to know what questions to ask if you're not put in a situation where you learn which questions to ask?
Yeah. When you get that first moment where, as a writer, you get asked by editor, okay, great, I'm doing this. Do you want this under your TIN or EIN? You're like, what? There we go. There should be a marketing class at every high school. Yes, and that's actually one of the reasons why I was grateful I went to Full Sales. They did have that self-marketing class. And Hypertext says, like and subscribe, kids. Absolutely. This has been the Sport Show Tuesday. If you are listening on podcast services around the globe and want to join the chat live, like Nick, Matthew, Pops, Potato Have, many others, head on over to youtube.com, twitch.tv, or Facebook. Follow Silverline Comics or the Madness Comics Network. Either one. Follow both. Do both.
Yeah.
And
Like, subscribe, send tacos.
yeah.
Hey, tell your friends.
Absolutely.
The more the merrier.
We do have shows on Wednesday, and actually, do we have a show on Wednesday? They didn't put anything on the calendar. There might be a show on Wednesday. 8 p.m. Eastern. Definitely a show on Sunday, though, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back next week, 8 p.m. Pacific time, talking about.
I think actually isn't the I think the Wednesday show, they shifted it to 6 Pacific, so it's at 9 now.
9 Eastern. Okay.
9 Eastern, I believe.
Yes.
So.
Thank you, Pops, for the correction. Yeah. 9 Eastern, 8 Sunday eat. And next week we'll be back 8 Pacific time, talking about how many panels does a page need. So we talked about your one panel pages, but now if you're pacing, like we talked about before, if you're working as a team and pacing out a book appropriately, how many panels do you actually need to throw on a page?
That's going to be a fun discussion.
Exactly.
Just visions.
I am adamant. This is the hill I will die on. All right.
Yeah, that'll be a good one.
Okay, no joke. I've seen a 24-page panel.
Well, don't.
And it is.
Save it.
Next week.
That's insane.
We're already starting. All right.
All right. Well, we see you next time. But until that time,
make mine
silver.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.